Cheni bi asibam enne ye de omo gina mara no.
Enyere sembika were mo ne yesi wonkonya bekenkan nyina asomo. Asomfa woti enkan ye me, rantie nua ba ma me, efom wo akafena. Mene.
Bema ba nana yawo ye boa.
Track 1 ye gina so aba.
Sikka FM track 1. Yen ye kloro.
Sikka FM 89.5. Yes, Sumasan. Sikka FM 89.5. Yes, Sumasantimai.
Yes, Sumasantimai Ghana man ye wi ase nyina aka wa fei ye wura esomni mo ankasa. Ene afepepepa Ghana Mampani John Dramani Mahama san ba bieu no woso afenemo eswaye na ne bo force nkokra lawyer Godwin Edwaji Tamaklo wababo ntia bebu nkonta afa Mampani afeba akwa wodi na konwa so no edwuma so ya wayo chese Mampani abone homodin pa ya chese enye asem kitwa Mampani na nkasemo waye osom kase e Jubilee House ne ye ya chese wada obade nyame ase won pempenso wode na bedro no man nyina oberi akonwa so afeba akonie no wame ye hu ne pa ne basa gusu a edi oman anima na chese esese woda na se no achi ana wo chese afeba akon a waba wobetena akonwa so no ene enhyehyɛ bebre no waye a enye wote aban mu nkoa ene beboa man no nemom so firi aban so kompa ne nhyehyɛ a wode agu akwan mu ebeboa oman no angazangaza wo chese oba ne nima mu odin nenso wosi gina yese bema eye nhyehyɛ bi a ebeboa oman no enei ene daachi nyina saa nhyehyɛ no ena o kire se eno na egusu a ema oman sesei yesidi no agina brane na fe fango bo kora so tia na etie na inflation said the nema boy huru kosura na se ba form no ne nyina etumi agina brane a aye kama pa Ghana Mampani John Dramani Mahama.
As we look back on the past year, we do so honestly. We have taken difficult decisions. We have undertaken difficult reforms. We've laid the foundations that may not yet be visible, but are sustainable for the sustainable progress of our country. We have prioritized economic stabilization, institutional reform, social protection, and the restoration of confidence, both within our country and in the international community. The work we have begun is far from finished, but today reminds us that progress is not measured only by numbers and by charts and diagrams. It is also measured by hope that is restored, by trust that is rebuilt, and correct direction that is regained. Thanksgiving must also be accompanied by recommitment. And so today, we recommit to ethical leadership, we recommit ourselves to service above self, we recommit ourselves to governance anchored in integrity, competence, and compassion.
Ene ye Ghana Mampani John Dramani Mahama ene somno na enye asode baako soma hodo ni nyina na kahye mu a na wode na se ma obade nyankopon wonpempeso a wode ye nyina aba bedru na Mampani kasa wiye no na ye superintendent and as a general superintendent enema the Assemblies of God Ghana Reverend Stephen Wingham wono so ekasa yesere Ghana fo nyina se nyame ye bi maye am yenke anu ntum yenna se na eno sayo so no na foforo bebre ebedi akire aba na yentie se de Reverend Stephen Wingham kasaye.
We will all agree that this past 1 year, we've seen the economy stabilize. We've seen our currency doing well. I've had friends from outside Ghana who call us and are full of praise to our leader for what God has done in the past 1 year. Transformation calls for thanksgiving. Then secondly, the nation had experienced God's intervention during a difficult moment. Verse 7 to 11. When their enemies came against them and God gave them victory, God gave them success in defeating their enemies. That was why Samuel raised an altar and then called the place Ebenezer. The third reason, the Bible says that God promised him to make him a great leader, and that on his throne the Messiah will sit. The Bible says David sat on the floor. The king of Israel, he dishonored himself by giving praise to God. He sat on the floor and said, who am I and my father's house that God should bring me this far?
Yes, and why Yankopon Edia bedroom pempensoya etise David imposa man any jay then Yamias man hopaya yen why Yamia Biama Beka ya no atum. And yet ye a general superintendent anybody Assemblies of God Ghana Reverend Stephen Wingham.
Yanto akase abone so esene emuni ni dada no ene afepepepe ena Ghana man panyi John Dramani Mahama abebi o oso akufuna mu swaye ebetina abenwa ne so se Ghana man panyi se ne omaye ho na ase asori a kire se afisiana no omodie no pepepepepepepepe eno ena Ghana fo bebre twene se ne abasa ebi kire mu o Ghana man panyi oba yeye dollar no ekofom cedi no akosoro inflation aba from ebi kire mu atrotro boaye fo ebi kura se trotro utramu a chese 3 hours ne yaje 300 Ghana cedi 30 Ghana cedi bebi o se yaje 3 cedi kura ne yaje ebi mu chema ne ma bebre ebi se mu bo aba from ebi se da bi emo no bo aba from de na nso betwa bewie na 7 caps instead of 10 caps no Ghana for atwepen ne krata tenten aye assessment eno NSC cancer ntro for yenso yati ngumo ntene so say yankwai ne ne Ghana for enkotwetwe nkomo ne ahwe ne omoka efa afi pepepa Ghana man panyin John Dramani Mahama abebiu edi ewo abenwa no yenko ne nkoti nkomo a Ghana for ene yense ntro for etwetwe ye
Namia do kakra Mama hitina no mem ko fom kakra de ko fom sabe ko fom nam petrol sem eswa at petrol ba for dollar no so ba for the dollar no o to ade fi outside ya na o kura de o dollar no eso mfa so eno na nko mbetuma ye ku bia ma ya ye pe so dollar ye si aba for na so o mem o to ade o mu so mfa so o to ade fi outside bia ye ntuma eno so bia wakata ya ba wu bia say yeah grand any the best round say I don't have one so be mo pe price ya mo pe na ye nya ba bia nka ho hwe ma ye e so so fi ko fro me na wo ko e bi ti say so fula ya betu afo ye betu ajo short a wo bro me nsa e betu afo si about 5C Johnson 5C asan wo bi so fula as we the free ko fro ko so fula ina enyan 5C there for 50 pesos then I say and so petrol na say aba from dollar aba from petrol aba for now say abani enmene ko honiti aba from bo na e bo personage for na so say the mama mu na say eye ya ne sa se koni say ya there no first ya no enya asemu na ye ni asem amumu na ogu no okoye pa mene da ka ke wi say oye mene e kwan no da hase ni so ye so dollar la from dollar from so put in trouble for but then they funny now fine my but the bullet no you know or papa dey on your side sorry or you ma mini problem or current government in administration na how you is security entity me a victim it is me kasa and dey aban bibia dey no pass be dey yi aban bibia dey yi be Sikka Kase3 6Pm now money planet my muslim paboni obi and paboni bi enso no be ka papa aban na me problem na Ghana police service entity me a victim last year na the aban to say when ya come for my we ma wasem mo when attitude so sign a commercial driver especially who prefer dum kediti ane me pass the end the central police for the entity for the to mo chance we dey me a victim na me can do nyina answer at the end of the day administration
at the end of the day no administration no Ghana fo na omu kani omu hunu afepepepe ni Ghana man panyi John Dramani Mahama ebidi abenwa no so
Wasuku so utie Sikka 89.5 enyimire no sia kase bom yento ansem de so no ed betu anim se asante mawura to kokoso 24 say to abebi King Solomon Pillar of Peace ekosira Ghana Police Service amachese IGP chire na nijia ajia was answer here yewura ede ababesra wo mo shebokra se wo mo ede yamamre ni amane ni sede oman yankasa ye ade ebewura posifo mo ni om training nyina mu enenso yewura akọ Bank of Ghana babia oman Ghana Sikka asem ne yakoma nyina wo na ho ne yajapade wo nti yakoma nyina so ho enti yewura akọ ho akọhwe dwumadie ai wo mo edi wo ho ne ntotoa hodo a ekoso na nenkasa mu na obo eye Bank of Ghana for abaso won hyehyɛ papa ne dwumason ya wo mo edi wo ho no musei na Dr. Johnson Esiama wono so ekire se ese mpode nyamia ya dom inflation sei abasenge digital 6.3 na se ejina ya empokra no ye ba December ni mokra na asanso adropia sa abre no kra na aba bedru 5.4 ni sa chese dropia ne guso a dropia Dr. Johnson Esiama won na di kan akasa yi nti yentie ne nsem ne wi a ne akwakotie yewura opemso die.
Our trade performance has improved and confidence in macroeconomic management has strengthened. And against this backdrop, Your Majesty, the question that you asked us in Mensha about the CD deserves a clear answer. Now we are happy to report that the CD ended the year in a much stronger position also than many would have anticipated a year ago. According to Forbes, a year-end level of about 10.67 per US dollar placed the CD among the stronger performing currencies on the African continent. This outcome, Nana, reflects not only improved sentiment, but also better fundamentals, also stronger reserves, reduced inflation, and restored policy credibility. However, Nana, we remain careful in all these, not to confuse improvement with permanence. Exchange rate stability is not something that can be declared. It must be earned and earned continuously. A currency remains strong, Nana, only when the real economy beneath it is productive, only when the economy beneath it is competitive, and only when the economy beneath it is disciplined. That is why we see the CD's performance not as a victory lap, but as a responsibility. Sustainability, Nana, as Your Majesty rightly implied in your question, rests on deeper choices. And let me name a few: fiscal restraint instead of excess, production, consumption, exports over imports, and long-term thinking over short-term comfort. Nana, these are not technical matters alone. They are matters of national values and conduct. And in this respect, your public counsel over the years has been remarkably consistent.
And a Bank of Ghana Governor Dr. Ernest Addison, we and open so tune for or say to Abebio, King Solomon, Pillar of Peace, and Sikka Kase3 or the Abasubo, Emma Bank of Ghana, Jumasonya Womo, and Wechi, and or share woman crimes or Munkoso, and yes, Papa said by Bema or my Ghana, is a Casemina so Akoswa Ayedru.
Accordance with our tradition, the language the traditional ruler speaks must be perfectly understandable to the ordinary trotro passenger. So when we speak of the mandate of the bank and the work you do, we do so without any pretentious jargons and simple layman's language, so that anyone from the ordinary person to the invested on can understand.
John.
I have summarized the mandate of the banks as that which will ultimately determine whether we have a roof over our heads, food on the table, clothes to wear, and the ability to provide for our education and healthcare.
John.
That is no exaggeration. You are responsible for the national currency, and you are also responsible for fixing the interests that determine the rate at which we can borrow money.
John.
It is a fact of history that when the currency is healthy, the economy bristles with opportunities. The people are able to use the opportunities to create business. The business allows the people to create jobs and ultimately work in wealth. When the city wobbles, even the tsunami can be less destructive.
John.
Over the past year, after a difficult period, we have begun to breathe easy as the city stabilizes on the foreign exchange market.
John.
We recognize these are only the early stools of progress, and one will do well to be careful not to start feasting, as the governor said, before the true state of the harvest is known. Nonetheless, we think it is appropriate to acknowledge the discernible shift in direction and to encourage you to take any measure that will keep us on the right trajectory. So I'm here to encourage you.
And I tell you, Santa Maria to say to Abebio.
Dr. Alhassan Idrisu aban kontabu for penny pa krache penny pa oda Ghana Statistical Board ano ono ena ode abetu just say afie twemu no ekona wie ye na Ghana inflation na yeda 5.4 chese yatete aba fom aba beda 5.4 chese niema ne bo no enkosuro ba na eba fom ene November mu kura no na Ghana yeda ohamu nchemu ensia ekira pom yensa sesi ayi de afene kona wie ne yeda num ekira po enan eno na Ghana fo bi si de ni inflation ya ade friend inflation yesi atete niema so niema bo aba fom nanso dokono pa first ne abo dokono 5 cedis akakraka nzu prempre ide obekọ dokono ne atumu ko 7 cedis no ko ti anye yakwabena no bedi mienu ana miensa ansa na wamen eniema bia ni wa yatete so na aban krat panyin si munya abotre na ise de inflation ne de aba fom o aba beduru ohamu nchichemu enum ekira po enan na aduane de akura de sene yesi ati inflation ne so ama inflation na eye November bosome na da ohamu nchemu nsia ekira po nsia no aba foma ba beduru ohamu nchemu nan ekira po enkono na chese mfre han no de sese de ayeda aba foma maniama bo so aba fom chese mui ya tete so ane se ya tete so anwan ya tete so ane se ya tete so fa so ma body so a body ya bo 50 cedis na so na de obekọ ne abo 5 cedis niama bo aba fom inflation aba fom aba krache panyiro Dr. Alhassan Idrisu ena kase yanko ni nkotin.
This means that on average goods and services cost 5.4% more than they did in December 2024. This result is significant. It is also the lowest inflation rate since the CPI was rebased in 2021. This steady decline signals sustained shift toward price stability and improving macroeconomic conditions. On a month-on-month basis, inflation in December 2025 was 0.9%. This means that prices increased by 0.9% between November and December 2025. While short-term movements remain, they are now occurring within stable and downward long-term trend. The data shows that inflation declined across most major components. Food inflation, non-food inflation, goods inflation, and inflation for both locally produced and imported items all eased compared to November 2025 and December 2024.
Dr. Alhassan Idrisu oye aban enkontabufo.
Yanto akasebone so yebo ye ho akodi bro nyana ne beto dwa se Constitution Review Committee wo ma wie wo madwuma de ho report akoma mampane John Dramani Mahama na no ho sama na leyi ngoma so afo no kroyara ye Tamale South na Shebedwani Honorable Haruna Idrisu ababeka na wo chese amafo bebre ehwe ni musanka report iba ye mampani John Dramani Mahama de white paper ebeto so no chese de be white paper no mampani enfant so was Mahama administration will not issue a white paper on for white paper bia nto eye report no abane so ni senti nyina ene se watch say mampani John Dramani Mahama na akra kan se report no recommendations e wo mu nyina fe ne eba beti committee ana se eba pa abedwaku a wo mbe na recommendations ni awo mode aye adwuma na enu achi no Constitution Review Committee no report o mode ba ye nsusu no ochemu a mampani eba beti abedwaku o mu nso ebehwe next step kwan foforo asietu edefa report no aba ni nyina ho enti so be behwe ni mu se ni manimu ye mampani de white paper beto so de senepa ema soi na emum committee ni mom ne ehwe ni mu se mampani be pawo na recommendations no mo ko amba fa so a ye de ebeye adwuma Honorable Haruna Idrisu.
2026 will be governance year agenda for President Mahama. Beyond economic stability, he would work to engender growth and transformation. The constitutional review process which was set up under the Prempeh Committee is not the same as the constitutional review established under Article 278 of the 1992 Constitution by President J.A. Mills. So currently, there is a team of crack lawyers who are reviewing the report that was submitted to Excellency John Dramani Mahama. After that scrupulous scrutiny, it will be subject to cabinet, party, political party, and public engagement. And as the President rightly announced yesterday, there will be a constitutional review implementation committee which will walk through the process of entrenched and non-entrenched provisions. So those of you who expected that a white paper will be issued, you got it very, very wrong. This constitutional review led by Prempeh and Co. was not established within the true meaning of Article 278 of the Constitution. So no white paper will be issued in that respect.
For Honorable Haruna Idris.
And checkra and a beto just Oduani Chiremu Kase Senior High School. Addition phobia honum Eddie and Yamana Semachese. Omo de Omo Mass teacher. Omo chirema wa mama amapo wa mama nwiem exam sinti omo chire na chire hono manwumre bi a chire se omu sibam ni sibam no we na be ma ne na so anu atu awo no we na be ya no abobo ni kotoba akokra do se na so oso na so chiche sententa fidie ne de na aje so afa ba bia eno kra ma enche Ghana mampanyi ekra ede na noto ensem yimu abra ohia achechirefo nka bomu ko efre ne nat enna enne de abeto ja chire se emofre enum a omudisa enyamnasem no Ghana posifo aso omo pachi a kire se omache omo dese ede omo akogina emra no omo kiremu a emu miensa de na omo buru mfie du nwotwe nti no court ahyese omo de yemfo omo nko prison o yemfo omo nko remand yemfo omo nko na December busumi January busumi ya yasimu ni da toso aduonu no yemfa omo mra na mun mienu so de na chese abrofo kasem no omo ye man no omo ye nkwada eno no ye do ma sha posifo nsa se omo hwe omo so no omo mpa ba bi kama ema omo enhyese ne be ya ehia omo January busumi ni da toso aduonu na omo ebetimi aba abepiemu eno na Oduani Chiremu wa Prayer Temu a nia oyejom training edema National Association of Graduate Teachers nagrato ode etuja se asem yi de asem de Ora Godwin Avuno Yevu ena Kase yanko ni nkoti se ni osichirensim ni.
Due to the press conference that we had last year where we gave an ultimatum to the IGP for the arrest of the suspects who were seen in the footage of the video where a teacher from the Kase Senior High School was assaulted, has yielded positively. Yesterday, the police team from the cyber security, in conjunction with the Kase police, were able to arrest 5 suspects. Because of the arrest of the 5 suspects, our intended strike, the sit-down strike that we intended to have, has been put on hold because the IGP has given a listening ear to our call, and we must recommend him and his team for doing a very good job.
Ora Godwin Yevu amananso awie na obo omaimu process ahene abaso se ayade papa esansensem am kan nyina wate na otu ho so anamo amanasani.
When courts sit on that matter, I think the judge will not mince his ways. As he indicated, you could say that he is a man of principle, a man who wants to uphold discipline in our institutions, and we must recommend him for that. And also, when the president came in, it gave us the assurance that discipline needs to be effected on the students for them to learn a lesson. So we must say that we are very grateful to the court, and we are also grateful to the IGP for the swift response to our press conference, which has averted our intended indefinite sit-down strike action. And I must also recommend the Director General of Ghana Education Service, Professor Davis, for his positive action taking.
Eni ayeti jomteni edema acheche for kabomu ko e friend National Association of Graduate Teachers nagrats onumanyam for Godwin Yevu
yato akase abone so alienko akuafo nchen na Ghana Ghana Rubber Farmers Association, Womo and Rubber Buyers Association, Woma Carbon the petition, Aquacoma or Swafo will share our catcher near and Yanahun some so catcher is said. And Sambia Ghana Rubber Estate Limited for air can omani enye home. Omushema Ghana Rubber Estate Company Limited for say and sasa ye de rubber sa say will be aqua rubber. Rubber no nya de adware no de adware de eche se de value aka ho ya add value to it de bi nya no ne eka ya rubber dia ya dua ene ye wo ko western of any western region ho no na wo trata kra de fampo ho kwan so ho no mo kode a wo ma dua rubber ye dua ni se koko na eduru bire bi na che se ye de se ka bobo ho ne nsuo tintan bi afiri mu aba na o ma akwa tete sa nsuo no anu ma bedan ni di bia ye nyame plastic chairs ni ade any tables ni ade ama sa rubber no na me ken na kuafo edua sa rubber no kire se dwumakuo ya womo na womo de womo ye rubber womo tito rubber no sa nsuo pacha no ano ma akodani de table ne bucket ya me adware mu kire se ensanse ya tete nsuo ne tentans ha no ne ye bɔ no ball sa de konkofo kro so koton ne bom ese sakra ni ansa ne de akuafo se da bi dear adwumakuo ne eka no sa Ghana Rubber Estate for eka no one person ton rubber for fifra for nsem entu no mo yes entu mo kacha so afo se kacha so afo no ensi sa Ghana Rubber for no ekwan na ne wo bia oteto rubber na person oton ma o ma no akoton o me so obeton ma o so obeton ma o be fufro a na je se watume akwa akoton na akuafo ya wo mo edi petition koma kacha so afo yi de odo wo ma no Michael Onyakon enti no.
We wish to state categorically that these claims are false, self-serving, and do not reflect the realities of Ghana's rubber industry. The pretense of industrialization, the so-called processors whom we call dryers, because they are not in actual fact processing rubber in Ghana. They are pushing for an export ban. It's not about protecting national industrialization. It is a deliberate attempt to monopolize the market, suppress competition, and force farmers to sell rubber cap plums at artificially low prices. We want the President of Ghana, His Excellency John Mahama, to hear from us that RUFAC is not against raw rubber processing or processes. In fact, we highly recognize them as critical partners in the industry. However, we expect that support fair competition, lawful regulation, and inclusive industrial growth. We are asking the so-called dryer company to answer this simple question. It is not a PhD question, simple question. Why can processors not offer higher prices for cap loans than exporters? Why can't they offer higher prices than the exporters? Why? And we are saying, why?
Ora Michael Onyakon ije so mu ko re to mani abre nyina se sa Ghana Rubber so hwane for limited wo hu nye se bia wo mo toto rubber na afia kra for se no mo kra dan ni akwa akoton o hwe nye sa no mo ye o mo mpeso mo toto fofofu akwa for nsem na wo mo koton no mo koton na bo de nti trimo pontia wo mo kase embra exportation enye trimo papa emo man no enti wo mo akuafo nka bomkui wo mo kokọ apai Kase3 6Pm na se kwa ma news ma adwuma fo nyina madam se wan pafo akoko asense chicken rasta na fi owa ahene ofatome eso eboa yem pa kwame for yaboaje o news room yesem for your falasa na kwaje abo si wo double fashion center na chinchin from na ade amaye enyimra kenkan for yeme rante